You're listening to episode number 80 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This is a Monday Q&A episode, and the question that I picked this week applies to so many of you. So that's obviously why I picked it. And the question that Mark sent in is, how do I increase my self-worth? Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Self-worth. It's something that I see so many people struggle with. And I'm going to create a follow-up episode to this one. I don't know when, hopefully soon. Candidly, I'm on vacation this week, and you know what? I don't actually create an entire library of audios, because many times when I pick my topics or questions that I want to pick, it's something that has to hit me in the moment, and I have to have some inspiration about it. So I'm on vacation. I'll make this a little shorter, but I did want to do an extended version, like a part 2 of this particular episode, on increasing self-worth and my own journey to self-worth and fulfilling and having the self-worth that I know that I am, meaning that I know that I am worth. Because I've had my own journey, which I'll share with you at some point, and I really want to sit down and think through that episode. So self-worth, it's something that I see so many people struggle with. And I'd mentioned on another episode that if I took you to a really expensive buffet, and I said, hey, you know what? They've got amazing things over there like lobster and king crab legs and all that. Go get what you want. Most people come back with a bologna sandwich. And that's also a matter of your worth, because your worth it comes from your identity, and your identity is going to determine your wealth and your abundance in life. And if you don't have a lot of wealth and abundance, maybe it's that you don't value money, and that could be too. I want to go 2 places here. Maybe it's that, you just don't value money. Or maybe it's that you do value it, but you never bring it into your life, and that's also a matter of self-worth. Also, I believe, where I work from, when I say I believe, but where I work from is, I think we all deserve abundance and prosperity. Yet what a lot of people do is they use abundance and prosperity to define themselves. And for me, abundance and prosperity is simply a tool so that I can make a bigger impact in the world. So I'm going to give you a couple of takeaways at the end of this episode, but I want to share some stuff with you first. But Mark's question was, plain and simple, how do I increase my self-worth? Now, I had never looked it up before, but Merriam-Webster, the dictionary, said that self-worth is a feeling that you are a good person who deserves to be treated with respect. And I find that kind of a hollow definition, because what that would mean is if you're a good person and you help people and you know what, you're just what we call a good person, well, then you have worth. But a lot of people are really, really, really wonderful, loving, very good people, but yet they still don't have self-worth. Self-worth is what I call the core of our very selves. And we'll go a couple of places here with this, psychologically, and then I guess what I'd say spiritually or cosmically. But the way that I look at it is that everyone on this planet is equal. There was a parable that was given to me one time, and it was a lot of years ago, that this executive, as it was explained to me, in a really expensive Mercedes-Benz, he pulls up to a stoplight, and he looks to his left, and there's a homeless guy. And the guy in the Mercedes and the wealthy guy is snarling at the homeless guy. And the homeless guy is snarling at the guy in the Mercedes. They're both looking down on each other. And the question is, who is worth more? And the reality is they're both equal, just living out different life experiences. So when we look at the world, we get into social constructs. For example, the Queen of England, you're supposed to bow to her and all these kind of things. And that's all cultural nonsense that human beings get into because at the end of the day, she has to eat just like you and I do. And, you know, at the end of the day, if the of England and I were to go hiking and it's nice and hot outside and it's just the Queen and I, well, guess what? We're both going to stink. I mean, we're human beings. We smell if we go out and hike all day in the hot sun. And when we get back, we're all equal. But so many people actually learn, and it's socialized through our parents and culture, we learn not to value ourselves. Now, there is a theory, and it's called self-worth theory. The self-worth theory posits that an individual's main priority in life is to find self-acceptance and that self-acceptance is also found through achievement. And so many people, I see this all the time, they place their worth based upon something external in their life. And something else, which I have a different position on, is in turn, achievement is often found through competition with other people. And where I work from is I'm not a fan of competition. And what I mean by that is I'm in competition with no one. And I used to believe in competition. And in the book, The Science of Getting Rich, one of the principles is stop working from competition. Now, we can have friendly competition, playing games or whatever, but in life, even in business, what I say to my students and people that are in coaching with me is that I have no competition. And I'll even ask people, well, who do you think is my competition? I'll ask that question, and people will say, well, Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy and people like that. And that's actually not true because I have a different genre, a different marketplace. But I say no. I have no competition because no one is me. There are things that other people can do that I can't do, and there are things that I can do that other people can't do, even if they have more air quote success in life or in the industry. So I don't place my self-worth on externals, not even close to that. And the externals that a lot of people place their self-worth based upon are my appearance. Am I as attractive as what other people are or what's deemed attractive? And so if they don't feel like they're as attractive as other people, then that affects their self-worth. Or if they're not attractive by social standards or whatever. Another one, and I used to be here back in my 20s. I am not that person anymore at all. This day and age, I do have high financial net worth, but that determines none of my worth and none of my value as a human being. Because to me, when I look at people, the most important thing to me is that a person has an open heart. They want to serve, they want to grow, they want to evolve, and they are, which we talked about earlier, they're just a good person. That's the most important thing to me because I know people that have a lot of money and they are not what I would call good people. I mean, they're mean, they're ugly to other people, they're hateful, they're spiteful, they're vengeful. All these what I characterize as counterproductive emotions and definitely low frequency thought vibration. People also place their value, their self-worth on their social circles. I have a friend of mine I've known for a lot of years, and what's interesting on Instagram is all of his posts are about, hey, I'm here this week and I'm there this week and I'm with this person and I'm with that person. And the people that he's with are all, some of them have some notoriety, some of them might be billionaires and etc. But this person's always saying, oh, I'm at so and so's house this week. And I really like that this person's a really good person. But what this person is doing is compensating compensating, and they're actually finding self-worth and value in their social circles. I have no judgments on that because I can say that I used to be there at some point in my life. This day and age, not there at all because it doesn't matter who I know and who I don't know. And who I know literally has no value on my worth, meaning people of notoriety. And I used to live in New York City and I used to coach. I mean, I've coached a lot of celebrities and worked with a lot of celebrities, A-list celebrities. I see them on TV. And it doesn't matter who I know or who I don't know because it does not affect my intrinsic value. My intrinsic value is my value as a being on this planet, whereas most people work from extrinsic value, meaning value outside of themselves. Many people place their worth on their careers. And then so many people place their worth on externals, and then they judge other people based upon those very same externals. The The problem with that strategy, the reason it's a broken strategy, is let's say that you place your worth on these externals like career that I just had mentioned or achievements. Well, the reality is as long as you have the appearance, or the net worth, or the social circles, or career or achievements, as long as those are going your way, you have high self-worth. But should those not go your way, then what happens is if you have your self-worth tied to those things, your self-worth goes down. So as a result of many people living through these external, circumstances, is many people do not feel worthy because they're comparing themselves to other people. I know you've heard me say before in one of the episodes is where I live by, and when I got this, it really changed my life. When I came to not just understand it, but to know it, is that I compare myself to no one. Now, did I used to? Absolutely. Many years ago, I used to say things like, oh, is my content as good as somebody else's? And people are going to say that I'm not good enough and I don't do something well enough or whatever. And at this point in my life, I literally 0%, I don't care because I know the impact that I'm making in the world. But the point that I wanted to illustrate here is where I work from is that no two people have the same karma. And I'm living my karma, and other people that are in the self-help, personal development industry, or whatever you want to call it, they're living their karma. I'm doing what I do to fulfill my karma and my dharma. They're doing what they're doing to fulfill their karma and their dharma. So why would I ever compare myself to anyone ever when we have different karma? We're learning different lessons. Now, I don't know how long you've been listening to the podcast, but you've often heard me talk about in generally every second episode or so, my brother-in-law, the shaman, Don Javier. I'm just thinking as I'm sharing this, people really, and I get why, people really don't understand shamanism. It is the oldest form of thought on the planet, but they really don't understand. And there are a lot of people that actually engage in learning shamanism and principles, etc., and there are books on it. However, a real shaman, which my brother-in-law is, somebody once told me that's worked with him for years, and I'll tie this to my self-worth in a story in a moment. They said, if you told me that somebody like him existed, and if I hadn't met him and worked with him, I wouldn't believe it. Shamans have extraordinary powers, and one of the powers is to, I'm looking for the right word here. I'm not going to say infiltrate, but shamans can infiltrate your dream time and your dreams. And they can, like negative shamans, which are black shamans, they work in the dark, can actually very negatively affect people's dream time with nightmares and affect people in very significant ways. My brother-in-law, Don Javier, only works in the light, and he only works for healing. And many years ago, we were on we were doing ceremonies somewhere here in the U.S., and we went there for a couple of days. And in Dreamtime that night, because see, this day and age, and there's an episode here on Dreamtime, when I need answers for things and I'm not getting the answer myself, I will text him and I'll say, hey Don, I need an answer on X, Y, Z, a business partner, healing, or something. Can you satellite me the answer? And I use the word satellite jokingly because what our code by saying that by satellite is meaning show me in Dreamtime. And I remember we were on a journey many years ago, on a physical journey, traveling, doing ceremony. I'll just call it ceremony. And that night in Dreamtime, let me just think through this as I share this dream that I had many years ago. It's probably 20 years ago. And in Dreamtime, and I remember the dream. I remember most of my dreams. And beyond that, Dreamtime has multiple levels of Dreamtime. We have ordinary dreams and we have dreams of power. This was a dream of power. And then there are also like doorways behind both those levels of dreams. But in this dream, I'm looking at him, and I'm not a screamer. No one that knows me can ever say they've ever heard me scream at anybody in anger. And in this dream, he's probably 8 feet from me, and I am screaming at him. And I am like, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. And then what happens, for those of you that are old enough to remember the TV show back in the 60s and 70s, I Dream of Jeannie, which was a genie that lived in the bottle, smoke would come out of the bottle and the genie would appear. Well, I'm screaming at him, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. And then poof, all the smoke comes up between us. And when the smoke settles, he's gone, and I'm looking in the mirror. And when I think back about that many years ago, I'm like, wow. And I even said to myself, because dreams are metaphors, and I get my guidance in dream time. And I said, wow, what places in your life and to what degree do you have hate for yourself and you haven't even recognized it as that? And I wanted to go into that. I can't do it in this episode, but I wanted to share with you where I learned that self-hate and where it came from. But I want to create a much more, I don't know the right word. I want to create an episode where I can share a lot more about my life, which with that hate, it also allowed me to let go of judgment of other people, fear of other people, what people think of me and all that kind of stuff. But again, I want to sit down with that episode and create that a little later and share a little more of my journey with you. And then you look at your life. I want you to look at how you treat yourself. And when I look at people who treat other people badly, a lot of people get angry about that and different opinions and interpretations. And my thought is this, is in my observation, that if someone's treating other people poorly, that's how they treat themselves. And then for me, that requires compassion. What a lot of people do is like, Bob's a jerk. He treats Susan like really badly, and he's mean and he's this or that. Well, what I also know is that Bob also treats himself that same way. So that requires compassion. And I think that's where a lot of our learning and growing comes in, is because I think a lot of our first natures are to say, wow, what a jerk. I don't want to be around that jerk. When compassion is really what's called for. I mentioned this in another episode before, is that I just popped in my head one day. I was standing in my office at home, and I had a little whiteboard behind one of my office doors, and I wrote this down, and it stayed on that whiteboard for about 10 years. And honestly, I didn't see it for about 9 years because I never really shut that door. But what I wrote on that whiteboard, and I want you to survey your own life as I'm sharing this with you. But what I wrote on that whiteboard is that I treat myself like I perceive myself. I treat myself like I perceive myself. Now, what I want you to look at is, how do you treat yourself? Because something that I tell people is that if you're destroying yourself through any kind of practice or counterproductive behavior, what I tell people is we don't destroy what we love. And if you're in some way sabotaging or destroying yourself physically, guess what? That is a matter of a lack of self-love and self-worth. And here's something else. So many people will say, and I get how slippery it can be, is, well, because we're all told we have to love ourselves. We have to love ourselves. And a lot of times we're like, well, what does that mean? I mean, how do I know? It's not like I've got a little meter that I've got my little self-love meter, and it's got like 1 through 10, and okay, I'm like on a 9.25. All right, I'm pretty good. I love my... No, it's not like that. But really where I wanted to go in another episode here with you guys and take you guys even deeper is what I've learned over the years in my own life is that self-worth and self-love comes from self-acceptance. We have to accept who we are. And there's a phrase that I use a lot. It's called the round room. And it comes from, here in Texas, we have the Texas A&M University, and they're known as the Aggies. And Aggie jokes are very prevalent in Texas, but Aggie jokes are about Aggies being really stupid and ignorant and etc. And one of the jokes, I remember this when I bought an Aggie book when I was like 10 years old. And the joke is how do you drive an Aggie crazy? And you drive an Aggie crazy by putting them in a round room and telling them to sit in the corner. And they just go in circles and circles and circles. And so many people are in a round room and they don't even know it. So the interesting thing here is this, is that so many people, and maybe even you, they look for their self-worth from external validation. So it would go along these lines. Oh, okay. I'm going to actually learn my worth because I don't have high self-worth and I don't feel good about myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for self-worth from external validation, meaning people out in the world. Now, here's the conundrum in the round room, is that if you don't have a lot of self-worth and you put yourself out in the world, people read your body language, they read you, your inflection, your tone, and then guess what? Because you don't have a lot of self-worth, they don't value you, and then what you do is you put yourself out there and you're like, see, no one likes me, I'm not very valuable, when actually you're the one who telegraphed the message to them that you don't have self-worth. They confirmed it. Now you even use external validation to say, see, I told you, people just don't like me. I don't have a lot of value. And then what you're creating, what you're engaged in, which a lot of you have heard before, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right, so here I want to share. So, okay, the question is that I think it was Mark, yeah, Mark sent in, is how to have high self-worth. The interesting thing is that it's really so simple. It's really, really simple, and it's so simple that most people miss it. We humans love to make things really hard. Making money is, okay, let me share something now. Making money is like so easy, it's falling off a log. Really, it's just universal principles. I've talked about it. Go back to episode number 9, how people use the law of attraction to repel money. But it's so simple to make money, and it's what most people struggle with. It's so simple to have self-worth, but so many people struggle with it because of the externals. And remember what I said just a bit ago is if you find your self-value in the externals, that's a trap. Because remember what I said, when all the externals, it's like moving all the little, the little levers on some kind of musical equipment. When all the externals go up, you go up. When all the externals come down, you come down. And where I work from is that I'm worthy. It's as simple as that. I'm worthy. I mean, the fact that I'm on the planet means I'm worthy. And then when I look at it is how do you even put a value on, let me just keep going here for a second. How do you even put a value then on whether I'm worthy? Because if I put my value like on externals, I live a really good financial life and I have a really good life, which if I'm comparing myself to other people, that puts me at the top of the worthy scale. But you know what? There are people that have a lot more financial abundance than I do, which makes me less worthy than them. So it's a trap. It's literally a no-win game if you're playing from anything outside of yourself. And where I work from is I'm worthy, and that is enough. Wherever I am in any moment, I'm worthy, and I'm good enough at that moment. Something just popped in my mind here. Like I said, these are not scripted. I remember many years ago, one of my clients in New York City, the very first day that I'm with him, his cell phone rings, and this was back in the late 90s, and I heard the whole conversation. It was he, and I could hear through the receiver. You know how you can hear people on the phone a lot of times, and this is back when we had flip phones, and it was he and the President of the United States talking about what they were doing for Thanksgiving. And I told a friend of mine later, I'm like, I'm out of my league. I don't belong around these kind of people. And my friend said to me, he said, you're not out of your league. Because this guy chased me. He wanted me to teach him something, some advanced influence skills. And my friend said, you're not out of your league. Because if you were out of your league, you wouldn't be there in the first place. And so I look at that metaphor that I'm on the planet and I'm worthy. Whatever I am, whoever I am, whatever other people think about me, what other people don't think about me, I'm worthy. And then I look also as about self-worth is nothing more than ego. And we learn it, but it's this ego we learn about the bag of skin you walk around in, which is a cosmic being. And when I look at it this way, a metaphor here is for those that firmly hold the idea of heaven as an example, does that mean that you'll value yourself when you go to heaven and you'll be good enough when you get to heaven, but you're not good enough here? And then I started wondering, well, do people in heaven go to therapy? I mean, do they have psychotherapists in heaven and people that are in heaven, do they have, do they have low self-esteem and they need to go to therapy and all this kind of stuff because they're not worthy? My whole point is this. You're worthy. Whoever you are, wherever you are, how tall you are, how short you are, how thin you are, how, over your ideal weight, whatever your sexual orientation is, whatever your nationality, you're worthy. You're good enough as you are right now. When you get your mind around that, that is very liberating, that you're good enough as you are right now. Because if you stop comparing yourself to all the externals, then guess what? You're automatically worthy. I mean, if you were dropped off on a deserted island like Tom Hanks years ago in the movie Castaway, I mean, geez, you think Tom Hanks walked up and down the beach and said, am I worthy today? Am I worthy? No, he is what he is because there's nothing to compare to. We do learn a lack of self-worth as children. I remember many years ago, and it's probably the last time I ate at McDonald's, literally. It's about 25 years ago when I lived in New York City. I can't even remember, but I was in McDonald's, and I don't know why, because I don't eat McDonald's food that I know of in decades. But there was this lady in front of me, and she had a beautiful, really, really beautiful little 6-year-old, 5, 6, 7 years old little girl. And as the mother and daughter are standing in front of me, the daughter's asking for something. And the mother looks down at her, and what she said to her little girl was devastating to me. Meaning metaphorical. It's like devastating that parents talk to their kids like that. And she said, "You know what? You're more trouble than you're worth." That's literally what she said. "You're more trouble than you're worth." And I was aghast. My thought was, because we learn to become who we are before the age of 9, unconsciously, uh, I was sitting there and I was like, oh my, what? I'm even fumbling through this as I'm telling you because it was so incredulous to me. I'm like, what has she just taught her daughter about herself? And being, a hypnotist for many years, being a hypnotist, I saw so much of this, and maybe some of this applies to you, is that you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s and you don't feel good enough. Things that are said to us as children, they stick. Even if we don't remember, they stick unconsciously. And I'm like, wow, maybe it had no effect. But what if that imprint, which is what we call it, what if that imprint sticks with her for a lifetime? And she goes through her lifetime wanting to be in a relationship or marriage or kids or whatever, and she holds at an unconscious level that I am more trouble than I'm worth. Then what she could possibly do is subjugate herself and deny herself and live a life literally of, okay, I'm not worth that much and I don't want to put anybody out. I don't want to trouble anybody. Tell you what, just put me last and put me at the bottom of the barrel. And she could live her entire life like that. Now, again, I don't know the end result of that, and I don't know what the imprint was, but that's how we learn it. So to Mark's question, there's a couple of ways. One would be, is subconscious reprogramming. There is an episode on that. I think it's episode number 5 or 6 when I talk about subconscious reprogramming. I would say go listen to that episode. On top of that, one of my transformational coaches many years ago, and I don't know how old this book is. It's not that old. Maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was told this. And I said, do you recommend a book for people? Because I had a client who had low self-worth. And I'm like, do you recommend a book? And she said, absolutely. Which is actually, the book is Subconscious Reprogramming in a different format. But the book is Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. I don't know the author, but it's like an Indian name, like Kamal or something like that. Or you can actually get online and just Google and search for self-hypnosis, self-love, and see what comes up. Because there are tons of websites out there and tons of hypnotists who do have audios on just, I mean, there's one site that I know of that probably has 300 different titles that I've mentioned here in the podcast before. But the reality and the truth is this. You can always change who you are. And if you don't have high self-worth, you've learned that. You've learned that at some point in your past, like perhaps a little girl at McDonald's, or your parents were talking down to you as a kid. And parents say things to us that really, really are damaging for a lifetime, and they don't mean to do it. They don't. They're doing the best they can, with what they have in any given moment when they're parents. But they will say things to us that will imprint when we're kids and will affect our lifetime. So where I work from, which I said a little earlier, is that I'm okay. I'm okay with who I am, just as I am. And nothing outside of myself can give me any value. I'm not broken. I don't need to be fixed. I'm not a bad person, even though, I don't read the reviews. And I ask you guys for reviews for social proof so that I can help more people. But in one of the reviews a long while back, somebody said I was a bad person. Got a chuckle out of that. But I'm not, as best I know and define a bad person, I'm not a bad person. I just work from where I am. This is who I am. And, like it, don't like it, take it, leave it. It's entirely up to you. I want to share a story with you, and I want to share the bigger part of this story with you at a little later time. I was with Don Javier. We were at Chichen Itza, and we were in Mexico, and this was 1996. And we used to do ceremonies the day before and the day after the spring equinox. And when I say ceremony, for your understanding and context, maybe you just want to call it like a meditation. But we do ceremonies. We've done them in power spots all over the world: Uluru, Palenque, Chaco Canyon, Haleakala, Machu Picchu, Isla del Sol, Giza inside the Great Pyramid, Teotihuacan, and other places on the planet. And I was in Don Javier's hotel room, and there were several of us, and he is the most loving, and compassionate person. I've never seen him angry, hurtful, spiteful, nothing except just pure love with people and kindness and gentle with his words. And we were talking about, I had to sit down and really think through this, but I knew how it applied to me, which I'll share on another episode. But he was talking about acceptance of ourselves. And like I said, there were probably 4 or 5 people in the room. And he said something that was just, I don't even know the word for it. But he looked at me and our eyes connected. And he said very gently, just be. And I share that with you. Just be. And that means just be who you are. Just be what you are. Just be you. So that's your transformational takeaway is just be. Okay, so as I said, I will do at some point a follow-up to this episode, and I'll share some stories of my life that have brought me to a place where I can be at peace. I'm good enough as I am, and I just be. Alrighty, the next episode coming up on Wednesday is, the title of that episode is, it's going to be about identity. You hear me talking about identity a lot. And you hear me saying that if you don't have something in your life, it's because you don't have it on the inside. You don't have it in your self-image. So the next episode is going to be about self-image and identity. And the title of that episode is You Cannot Outperform Yourself. All right. Make it and by the way, this is contextual. It's Christmas week coming up next week for those of you that celebrate Christmas or the holidays or Hanukkah or nothing. It doesn't matter. Just be joyful, be peaceful, enjoy your time with your family if you're with your family. Travel safe, and I will catch you over on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. You know, if you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.